Hello and welcome to my December 2018 Q&A video for my Patreon supporters. This is now the 12th and probably final Q&A video. I'm glad I managed to do one for every single month, even if I wasn't entirely consistent. And my phone is on 1% battery, so I hope I can get through this without having to restart everything. So first of all, from Paul, who is not a Patreon supporter but asked if he could ask a question, and I was fine with that because no one else really asks if they can ask a question, and it's not like I'm going to get inundated with these things anyway. He says, my question is, what is the Blu-ray you have watched the most times, as in which actual disc has been put in your player the most times, not a film you would have grown up with or had on VHS, etc. The Blu-ray disc I've watched the most. Again, typical Luke, I haven't actually looked at these questions and given them much thought beforehand, but let me think about that. I would imagine Blade Runner's probably up there with the amount of times I put it on when I go to sleep, but in general, perhaps, I think, because I've watched that film quite a few times, and with the audio commentary and so on, I think The Last Jedi has got quite a few spins as well. There's not many films that I kind of watch over and over again on Blu-ray, I have to say, as big as my collection is. Sunrise has gotten quite a few spins for sure. The first time I watched it, the second time, and then watching it again for the review, watching it with Connie for the 24-hour movie marathon. Sunrise, The Last Jedi, Blade Runner, those are some of the ones, I think. And we get to the point now where like certain films are on Netflix, so it's just easier to click on it's awful to say as a Blu-ray, advocate and collector and supporter and defender and champion of. Sometimes the easiest thing is to go on Netflix if it's on there. But I would say that, yeah, Blade Runner, The Last Jedi, the original Star Wars films I watch on, my own film print copies, so I don't really watch those Blu-rays much. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I think Alien and Aliens as well, they get like once a year, every year viewings, so those are like, some of my favorite Blu-rays for sure. So that's I hope that's a decent enough answer to the question. I don't have doesn't feel like I have a particularly good one, but there you go. Chris over at CM42 TV and the Good Bit Podcast asks, what is your best memory of opening an amazing present on Christmas morning from your childhood? Was there something that you really wanted that you finally got from Santa or a family member? Well, you know how I like to ramble. I remember when I was very young and I heard very late Christmas Eve night, something outside my door, and I ran to the door, I opened it, and outside was a big bag full of sweets and presents. And I thought that it was Santa, but I thought, it's my mum though, really? So I ran into her bedroom and she was there just like asleep. To this day, one of the most amazing bits of parenting ever, because she must have literally dropped outside my door, ran to the bedroom, jumped in and just pretended to be asleep within the span of about 7 seconds. So she had me believing for that moment. And I was so excited that I think we woke up at we got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and she let me have some chocolates before going back to sleep again for a few hours. Anyway, that story just jumped to mind because that's the period where I remember Christmas being such a huge deal, was in that first place I lived in back in Wales, at the Billy Banks, if anyone would know of that place. That's where I spent many of my formative years growing up. Very rough and controversial area, but much beloved at the same time and missed area. Just one of those weird pockets of time and places that has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people. Anyway, I think for me, it always is going to be it must be Christmas 1995 or 94. It was the year I got the Super Nintendo. Oh boy, did I want that Super Nintendo, and the way in which I got it was incredible. I went downstairs Christmas morning, and in the living room was this tent. It was a Lion King tent, and so it was like I don't know, it was just a cool little, like, all the presents were inside the tent, And I remember having my cousin Adam sleep over when we put the tent in the second bedroom, and we'd sleep inside the tent, even though it was so small that it was kind of cramped, but it was, we're in our own little tent inside the house. But the Super Nintendo was inside that tent, and I don't remember really much about that Christmas. I just remember the excitement of opening the door and seeing that tent, seeing the presents, and then having that Super Nintendo and playing games like Donkey Kong Country, and that was my favorite console ever, I think. So that's my favorite Christmas morning memory, I think. That was just like awesome. And there's been many other great ones, but that's the one that jumps to mind. Alex McPhee asks, how would you rank the Human Condition trilogy films from favorite to least, and quick thoughts on each? That's a difficult, really difficult one, actually. An incredible film, I think. I almost like to just view it as its own piece, even though you can break it into 3 films, or if you prefer 6 films, because they split it up into 6 parts, and also 3 parts for theatrical distribution. But, you know, you can also view it as one very long experience, although it is, to me, very clearly defined in 3 sections. The first is it, I forget, is it the guy, is it Kaji? If that's the character's name, but regardless, the main character played by Tatsuya Nakadai, one of the all-time greats. His character, this pacifist who works at a prisoner of war camp in Manchuria. The first film is him working in the prisoner of war camp and kind of, you know, locking heads with the people who run the place and how things should be run and how the prisoners should be treated. The second film is about him actually being enlisted, even though he's a pacifist, and being forced to become a soldier, to become the thing that he hates. But he does a great job at it anyway, because that's kind of the person he is. He will do the very best he can in the situation he's in. And then the third film is him basically on the run. I won't say on the road, but out in the wilderness with a group of wandering travelers who are trying to get away from the war. Very 3 distinct movies, but following this one epic journey of a character. I think that perhaps the first film is maybe my favorite, in the sense that you get to see him at least try to make things right, at least try to do the right thing. By the second film, that has kind of been removed from his life, basically, and he tries to do the best he can within the confines of being in the army, but there's only so much you can do with that, and you just see the pain etched on his face throughout that entire film, throughout all 3 films, really. There's so much struggle and inner turmoil going on inside him, which Nakadai conveys beautifully. And, you know, the second one has its moments. I think the scene on the battlefield is one of the most effective and gripping moments of a war film I've seen, in its almost lack of, oh wow, I'm just seeing a spider crawl up onto one of my Blu-rays. That's kind of creepy. Yeah, without being loud and this is a war movie, look at all these explosions. You know, it's more kind of visceral and just like, poof. I don't know, something about it was so realistic and unlike anything I'd seen in a war movie. The third film is just so depressing that it's hard to kind of favor that one, I think, over the other 2. So I would say the first one is my favorite, followed by the second and the third, which makes it seem like, oh, it's you know, it just gets worse as it goes along. No, I think the whole thing is a masterpiece, you know, and I'm trying to move away from using that term so much, but this is a film that absolutely applies to. It is a masterpiece, and that would be how I would rank them, and my thoughts are that it's one of, if not the best film on war ever made. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Human Condition trilogy. Now we have a question from Aaron Pennington. What are some of your favorite Christmas movies? You guys really need to get off that Die Hard thing. It's getting older and older every year. Not that I'm saying you were saying that, but that's just like, man, we get it. If that's what you think, live with it. Stop talking about it. I'm sick of it every year. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. You don't think Die Hard's a Christmas movie, then you don't know it. No, okay, we get it, you know, just enough now. Enough. You know, I just feel like that scene in Jurassic Park, like, this guy thinks Die Hard's a Christmas movie. See, nobody cares. Die Hard isn't one of my favorite Christmas movies. It's one of my favorite action movies, though. But again, I'm not going to be a stickler about that and get to the actual question itself. Some of my favorite Christmas movies, Santa Claus, the movie. I mean, I love that film. I grew up with it. And I watched it a few years ago at Christmas with my nan, or at least some of it. And it's the scene where they're going on the Santa's sleigh and all that. And my nan was watching it and she just went, oh, it's just magical, isn't it? I'm just like, yeah, it is. It's a magical film. I know it's not seen as a very good film. It's kind of quite maligned, in fact, but I love it. And yeah, I just love the villain in the film, played by John Lithgow, who wants to kind of create a new Christmas to kind of get more money out of the consumers. Christmas 2! Just a deliciously kind of over-the-top villain, and a real sense of magic for Christmas, I think. And I love the guy who plays Santa Claus. I just really enjoy it. That's a warm Christmas movie to me. And then I would also say Home Alone, which we watched recently. It's awesome. It's just the best. I love Home Alone. But there's not many like Christmassy kind of movies that I kind of really gravitate towards. I don't really watch many Christmas movies over Christmas. They're kind of fall movies, which I hate to say that because it's not inherently British term, but fall movies, like kind of autumn movies, you know, winter movies, where it's just kind of like, you know, films that aren't Christmas movies at all, but they're just kind of things that I enjoy watching more when it's cold outside, you know, like the Harry Potter movies or the Lord of the Rings movies. But yeah, so those are two that jump out to me, as Home Alone and Santa Claus the movie. Alex McPhee also asks, are you ever going to change your Patreon profile pic? No. He also asks, favorite Harry Dean Stanton roles. Let's see if I can actually... I don't want to disturb the spider, though, because it's on this Blu-ray, I think. And it's not anymore. Okay, so it was actually crawling over this just a second ago. Ah, it's on my Journeyman Blu-ray now. Okay. Let's see if I can get like a cameo from the spider in this video. Anyway, Lucky. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Harry Dean Stanton role. Not to be one of those like, oh, you know, like, hey, here's this new thing you might not have seen that I think is the best. But I really was affected by his performance in that. And, you know, there's something about someone who's older, and in that film, very, very older, you know, just ancient, really, in his 90s, and reflecting on your life and things. I don't know, there's something about that film I really love. And I think his performance is great in it. And he's a great actor. And there are many of his performances, specifically from earlier in his career, that I've never seen. Obviously, you enjoy him in Alien, you know, right. But yeah, actually, that's probably my favorite. And I also really enjoyed him in the third series of Twin Peaks. But I have to say there's many of his roles I've yet to see, which is kind of an exciting thing. Like Paris, Texas is one people talk about a lot. And he's just had such an incredible career and such a longevity that there's going to be so many for me to go back and enjoy and discover for the first time, which I'm really excited about. Then we have Nick, who asks, who in Hollywood is the most naturally talented performer? Not necessarily the best actor, but someone who could act, dance, sing, make you laugh the whole lot. Bit random, but just finished this Judy Garland documentary. Obviously sad story, but someone who could have had it all. Or but someone who could... Okay, you've worded it weirdly there. Okay, someone who had it all, could have had it all, regardless. That's an interesting question. I don't quite know how to answer it. And I really want to get this spider in the video. Can we get him in there? It's not focusing, but you can see him darting along. There he is. Hello, Mr. Spider. Can we get a bit of focus there? Whoop, whoop. Focus. Oh, he jumped off. Holy shit, that got me right in the gut. Okay, now he's gone somewhere. Hey, whoa, he's actually on the... What the fuck? Okay, right, I don't want... Okay, he's on the... Sorry, this is ridiculous. Right. Okay, back to the question. Sorry. So, the most naturally talented performer, that's a really difficult question. It's jumping right out of me, Emily Blunt. I wouldn't necessarily say she's the most naturally talented performer in all of Hollywood, but she's someone who can be really funny. She has really good comedic timing. It seems like she's a pretty damn good singer, and so on. And she can be a great, tough action star. She can do a hell of a lot. She's got quite a lot of range. Perhaps you wouldn't really think about it immediately, but something like A Quiet Place, like the emotional acting she can do is unparalleled almost, I think. Like, that is an incredible performance. But someone who can do that really dramatic stuff, but can be really funny as well. I think that's a great talent. I also think that, I don't know if he can sing or dance so much, but I think Steve Carell is one of my favorite actors, and he's someone who can be unbelievably funny and unbelievably brilliant in a serious role, and he can disappear into roles. He can do something like The Way Back, where he's just such a believable dick, like you hate him in that film, and then he can be someone who you just absolutely love, and you want this guy to succeed so badly at whatever it is that he needs to succeed in, and then he can be someone more sinister, then he can be someone more pathetic, then he's just got such an incredible dramatic range, and then he's also an incredibly funny comedian or comic actor as well. So Steve Carell is absolutely up there for me. And you also asked, Nick asked, might be too late, but just been announced that HMV is going into administration again. Looks like it's over for them. What do you think? I think it's going to be a big loss if they do go under. I remember years ago when they went into administration for the first time, I thought that was it. They seemed to survive. They held on. And it's just it's going to be an experience that eventually we're going to lose altogether, which is going into a shop and buying a Blu-ray. I don't think physical media is going to completely die, much to everyone else's belief. But you know, I mean, look at people like me who pour so much money into it, and there's a lot more out there like me who spend a lot more on Blu-rays. I think it's a viable business. It's a viable, sustainable business, and in general, you know, as far as Blu-rays, physical media. But as far as HMV goes, I really do hope that they pull through for a second time. It might be too little too late at this point in time. Maybe it's past the point of no return, I guess you could say. I really don't know what's going to happen with HMV, but I hope they don't go under, because it's such a nice part of the Blu-ray / movie buying experience, is going into a shop and actually flicking through physical titles. And in some cases where you want to get something that's like a nice edition, you can kind of find one that has a nice slipcover, or the box isn't creased or whatever. I like that part about going to HMV, but perhaps the sale that I thought was so good recently is kind of the writing was on the wall, you know, trying to shift a lot of stuff. And, you know, I wouldn't mind kind of taking advantage if they do go under, and as far as getting stuff at really good prices. But that's just, that would be the worst case scenario, I think, because I would rather it stayed around long term than get a few deals, on some things. I think that, it's a real shame, and perhaps it might be the end for HMV. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think a lot of people do their shopping online now, and that might be part of it. They might keep the HMV online side, I don't know. But regardless, it's pretty sad for someone like me. Although, of course, relative to, everything else that's sad in the world, obviously it pales in comparison to the real issues. But as far as the Blu-ray collecting world and bubble, it's a quite sad state of affairs. Vezius asks, all of us collectors tend to get DVDs and Blu-rays in our collection at some point that turns out to be appalling in terms of quality, bad video or audio, or extremely repulsive in content as your personal tastes go. The kind of stuff that you're not sure if you should just throw in the bin and not even bother reselling or gifting to someone. What would be your picks or pick for such a release or a film? So a Blu-ray that has bad audio or video, I'm never too fussed on the audio, to be honest. It never is an issue with me. Not an audiophile in the slightest. Obviously I can tell if it's like really bad, but for the most part it's not one of those things where, oh my god, it's not 6.1 or whatever, that doesn't even factor into it to me. And then the film itself having repulsive content, I don't think I've ever really encountered that. As for video quality, I mean, there's been disappointing transfers. There's been things that, that could have been, I mean, the really random thing, the plain archive release of Blue is the Warmest Color. The menu has this song that is like, it feels like it was ripped off YouTube in 2006. Like, it's just so bad, the quality. And I hate that, because it's such a nice release, like the package and everything. And you put the disc in, it's like, oh, what's this awful low quality song? Also, I might be able to grab it off the shelf. The Thief of Baghdad, the Masters of Cinema release. One of the menus on this has a production still from the movie with Douglas Fairbanks. And there's a production still of him in his outfit and everything in the movie, and it's like low quality. Like, it's pixelated. And I have access to the Flickr account, I think, of Eureka, where they post a lot of the production stills and images that you can use in promoting the release if you're reviewing it or whatever. And I've seen all those images from Thief of Baghdad in glorious, like, high quality. So I don't know why they didn't, like, what happened there. So that's just one of those really small things that bugs me, but obviously it has no bearing on the film whatsoever. I can't say I've really encountered a film yet, or a Blu-ray, where the quality has been so bad visually that I've thought of getting rid of it. Obviously, there are films that I don't like that I get rid of, but not films I've been repulsed by. So I can't really answer that question, I suppose. I think with you, I mean, you're more into like horror stuff, like big time. So I think there's a lot more opportunity there to get repulsed or to see something you really don't like. But I will say, and see if I've got time to, how much time I've got left to talk here, but I will say that I am a great blind buyer. I will blind buy a lot of stuff based on the brand name. So Massive Cinema and also Criterion. And there are two Criterion Blu-rays that I very easily could have picked up out of interest, and that would have been Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, and In the Realm of the Senses, both of which I've reviewed. And You can see me rant about those films in depth if you wish. And very controversial videos on my channel for sure. Hate those films. And if I had bought them to blind buy because they're in the book, 1,000 movies you must see before you die, let's check out this film that's supposed to be a masterpiece and artful, and watched it, yeah, I would have felt like throwing it in the bin. But what I would have done is just sell it and try and get my money back, I suppose. But yeah, those are films I would not keep in my collection, not even for the sake of having a complete Criterion collection or anything like that, because I don't see the need, because I'm never going to watch it again, have no interest in going back to it. So yeah, but I've just been lucky, I guess, with the things I've picked. There have been things I've watched and thought that's not very good and I've sold or whatever, but nothing to a repulsive degree, and nothing that I thought, you know, the quality is so bad I need to get rid of it. Joey asks me, hope I'm not too late, just wanted to say thanks for everything you do on YouTube. Your videos mean way more to me than they probably should. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that they do, and I appreciate that. I did have one question though. Hypothetically, if your entire Blu-ray collection disappeared and you had no way of getting them back, would you start the collection all over again, or let the past die, so to speak? Very, very good question. If my whole Blu-ray collection were to disappear, I'll leave that one in for free. If Thanos was to stick his head through the window and snap his fingers and all this were to disappear, and, you know, my Criterions were to tell me, Luke, I don't feel very good, and they just, you know, fizzle out and dissolve into dust in my hands, what would I do? Would I start over? Would I rebuild, you know? No, I don't think I would if that happened. Obviously very hypothetical, obviously not within the realms of impossibility. It certainly could happen, but I wouldn't, at least I wouldn't try and get everything again. That would be a colossal waste of money and time and effort, I think. And you look at a collection like this, I mean, my collection isn't that big, really. I have about, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500, something like that. There are people who have 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000. People have huge, unbelievable collections. But I think the bigger it gets, if you were to lose it all, the harder it is, obviously, to replace it. I mean, that's just, that goes without saying, of course. Stupid thing to say. But, you know, I think that I would continue collecting. I would buy my favorite films. I would try and get some of those nice editions I had before, but if they turned out to be too much, because a lot of things I have are like limited editions that are out of print. So there are certain titles I would never get again, and I wouldn't pay silly money for them either. And it would probably actually give me a better outlook, and it would probably make me appreciate film, like just watching the film more than having the Blu-ray, which, you know, I probably shouldn't admit, but I think that probably would be the case. But it would be horrible to lose all that. Same with anyone who has a large collection of things or something they've put a lot of money into and they were to lose it. So, you know, I certainly wouldn't be dejected enough to never look at a Blu-ray again, but I would buy the essentials and stuff. And, you know, yeah, it's just one of those things where it would be so stupid to try and buy all of that back, especially some of the things that go for more extravagant prices, for sure. So that would be my answer to that question. Finally, we have from Man vs. Film, Graham. What movie-related New Year's resolutions do you have? Haven't really thought about this. I don't have any really New Year's resolutions yet. It is January 1st as recording this. I've still got the whole day to think about that. But movie-related New Year's resolutions. Yeah, I want to watch more films from the book. 1,001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, and I want to review more of them, get that series back on track, which is more of a YouTube resolution than anything, but, you know, getting back to more of those films, not stress too much about getting to all the new releases, for sure, although I like pushing myself to do that anyway, because I find these films that not many people are talking about that I end up loving, so it's always worth the hunt. It's always worth digging around in those films that aren't really getting as much attention. You have to sift through some shit, but you'll find some real gold eventually, and if you watch enough, that is. So yeah, watching more classic films and films that I need to see and so on. And yeah, just chipping away at things. There's a lot of, you know, the Ray Harryhausen films I still haven't watched that I can't wait to kind of set aside the time for. You know, to kind of watch more films from my favorite directors. I can see on my shelf now the Brothers Bloom from Rian Johnson. Just, you know, kind of picking off these like gaps in my knowledge of directors that I really like, or actors and stars that I really like as well. So yeah, I've got plenty, and I think another resolution would be to watch more of my own Blu-rays, you know, because I tend to do a lot of streaming viewing and Netflix and things. Let's try and, I remember I did in one of the Q&As, I talked about how many films in my collection I'd seen versus how many I hadn't. And I think that the final tally was like, I think I'd seen roughly 750 and I hadn't seen 500. So that wasn't too bad. The ratio was higher than, you know, I'd watch more than I hadn't, but I'd like to make that gap a little bit bigger and watch a lot more of the films that I own, because it does get a bit ridiculous when you have hundreds of movies you haven't seen but have been on your shelf for a couple of years. So that would be my New Year's resolution for movie watching, I think. Thank you all for the questions. This will be the final Q&A for the Patreon Q&A series. I'm glad I've done 12 for the full year of 2018. But I think that it gets to a point where I don't get many new Patreon subscribers, supporters, whatever you want to call them. So asking people to kind of give me questions every month, I think gets a bit tiresome. I had one person say, I've got nothing, you know, I've asked you everything. So I think that it's a nice time to end it. We got to the end of the year, but people seem to enjoy these videos, so maybe now I open up to you. Maybe I open up to the entire, you know, viewer base, and anyone who watches my videos. If you have any questions, throw them down below. Maybe I'll get to them. Maybe I'll continue doing these and it'll be not so much a Patreon exclusive, but just a regular series, and maybe give more people a chance to give me some questions. But we'll see. It's all up to you, I suppose. I thank my Patreon supporters so much for everything over the past year, and in a lot of cases for a lot of my Patreon supporters for the past few years. I really, really appreciate it. It means more than I can say, and I hope to try and maybe give you something a little bit better in return in 2019. I'll try and work on some things, some exclusive videos and things like that. I did one exclusive Patreon movie vlog last year. I hope that I can do more of those. So yeah, I always need to be better at that, I think. But thank you anyway, regardless. Super appreciated, and I hope you all have a good new year. This is the first video of 2019 officially. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.